Hello and welcome to Mortgage Solutions' First Time Buyer Debate. I'm Mortgage Solutions Editor Victoria Hartley. The first time buyer question is quite simply one of the crunchiest and emotionally fraught around. Home ownership was recognised in last week's budget alongside beer and petrol prices as being key to the average voter. But the reality is dawning for many that they will never be homeowners. A whole generation is facing the massive loss of wealth that home ownership can bring. So can a combination of industry and government initiatives go some way to solve this conundrum? This Mortgage Solutions debate, sponsored by Halifax, brings together some expert and well-known industry commentators. Peter Curran, Director of Strategic Partnerships with Lloyds Banking Group, Andrew Montlake, Director at Corico Group, Mortgage Advice Bureau CEO Peter Brodnicki, and last but absolutely not least, Simon Tyler from Tyler Mortgage Management. Welcome everyone. Now, first of all, the number of first-time buyers are at their highest level in 5 years. So some might ask, why is this still the tricky subject it's deemed to be when 216,000 or thereabouts first-time buyers actually got onto the housing ladder in 2012? They're also 42% of all lending in January. So is the government right to focus on this sector so heavily? If I can turn to you. Peter Curran, what's your view?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, first, the good news. 216,000 is the highest it's been for a number of years. The reason, I guess, for the concern is that that's still only really around 50% of what the number was 5 or 6 years ago. And obviously, the government's keen to see an increase in first-time buyers. First-time buyers ultimately underpin the housing market, and that's where the focus is. And I guess at Lloyds, we're in a similar position in as much as we've made a commitment this year to support the first-time buyer market, more than we've ever done, and we've always been a big supporter. We've pledged to help around 60,000 people get on the housing ladder to the tune of around £6.5 billion. And I guess that's the issue that we're tackling. The main issues, I guess, are that the outlook for the UK economy, house prices, remain slightly unclear, albeit we have seen the start of a little bit of an increase. But I guess sustained growth can only come from an increase in confidence, pressures on household finances perhaps reducing slightly, and just generally a more positive feel to the market. So I guess that's what the government's trying to encourage.
Okay, and there's talk that potentially the NewBuy scheme could actually be extended, potentially. It's the details still very, very hazy, but I'm just wondering, is this something that that would make a big difference? Just to recap, actually, before I turn to you, Peter, NewBuy, just to recap exactly what it is, it's available to all buyers, despite essentially being a first-time buyer scheme. Home borrowers can buy with a 5% deposit. The property must be new and cost less than £500,000. And currently there are 6 approved NewBuy lenders, including Halifax, actually, as well. But there was an FT story this weekend which suggests things like extra public land might be freed up for the scheme. Equally, there could be some more funds injected into the scheme. But as the scheme stands at the moment, Peter, what are your thoughts? Is it working properly at the moment?
Yeah, I think there's been some unnecessary bad press about the scheme, to be honest. It got off to a little bit of a slow start, but then of course the targets that were set of 100,000 units over 3 years were unrealistic when building was only a little bit over that each year anyway. The pace of new buy applications has increased quite significantly since November, and especially this year. In fact, we're involved in new build quite a bit, and in February alone, 38% of all new build inquiries were about new buy, which is the highest so far. Already completions are around 18%, and that will start to increase following that spike that's come through. I mean, it's an excellent product. It's 95%, 4.2%, great product. It's a very simple product to understand and to explain for brokers. But actually, also one of the reasons why the activity has spiked recently is that from the beginning of this year, the product's also been extended into part exchange, which really allows people with eroded equity to get higher loan to value, cheaper rates. So I think that's a good first step, and maybe some extension of that into resale properties would be a positive way forward as well, and would help the market significantly.
But I'm wondering where, in particular, this enthusiasm for new buy and new build is coming from? Because is the government getting better at getting the message out there these schemes exist? I wonder where these inquiries are coming from. Is it people who do their own research and actually find out, you know, where the schemes are and get in there? Is it just the clever people still finding the schemes? Because the numbers are still quite low.
Hello, but I think if you actually look at most companies' internet traffic just beginning of this year, I know Coroco's and ours, without any particular massive reason, has virtually doubled this year. So I think people are encouraged by more positive news out there, are doing more research and finding out. I don't think it's hugely publicised. I think people have to make do their own research, and brokers have to help educate people as well, letting them know they've got these opportunities to get them on the property ladder.
Right. The builders themselves have done a good job as well, actually. Obviously, it's this part of the scheme is really for them to generate the purchases for them to be able to sell their products to, and they've done quite a good job publicising this.
I think it's important to differentiate between new buy, new build and first time buyers, because the first time buyers, when we talk about 60,000 first time buyers and 6.5 billion, perhaps 20% of that might be new buy, for example, or new build. So therefore, first-time buyers largely are still going to be buying second-hand properties, and therefore for them the question is one of what's the deposit. So new buy is fantastic because it allows people to buy a new build property with a 5% deposit, and they own the property. You can't get 95% mortgages readily and easily in the second-hand market, but you can start to get 85 and 90. So just generally speaking, there's just been an easing of the deposit needed, and I think there's a little bit more confidence that the broker community's done a lot to engender, that the direct community has too, in terms of trying to explain to people you don't need 20-25% to get on the housing ladder anymore, but there's still a lot to be done.
Well, even in the last 12 months, you know, you've seen 1 in 100 first-time mortgages being at 95%. We're now down to 1 in 40 and falling. A little bit of competition, not much, coming at the 90% level. You know, so all those things are helping first-time buyers, without a doubt.
Well, some of that's at the macro level because now more funding is available. Banks aren't having to put away quite as much as they expected to lend at the higher multiple, at higher percentages. I mean, you know, the risk attached to a high percentage mortgage is coming down a little bit compared to where it was. The pendulum is swinging very slowly back towards a more sensible market.
So this is quite shared home ownership, the equity share schemes, and even new buy as well. These are seen as a specialist market. So for any broker who's looking at opportunities there, how do you think he should be approaching this market? What are the opportunities? Peter, I can offer that to you.
Yeah, I mean, if I kick off with the new build first, I think the issue there, I think it's been called a bit of a cartel by some brokers. The brokers that don't have access sometimes are more negative about some of the schemes relating to it. But the builder are the ones that's funding the new buy in terms of the MIG they have to fund, etc. And they choose who they want to deal with. And for a long time now, they've dealt with people that specialise, gives them the service that they want. So although new build is a very straightforward product and not complex in any way, requiring any level of specialisation, the relationships and pre-existing relationships certain brokers have with builders are very hard to break because they are very demanding. You know, they want 7 days a week cover, they want everything vetted within 60 minutes. You know, they want MI coming out their ears, they want constant meetings. So, you know, not every business is geared towards doing that. So although you may have access, like some lenders are now giving access to all brokers on new buy, you're not necessarily going to get access to the builder and be able to service their clients. So it is a difficult situation. In terms of shared ownership, it's probably even more specialist and fewer brokers even dealing with that. If you look at where it's most popular, it's now starting to grow a lot of popularity in London and the South East, where obviously raising deposits is far harder than anywhere else in the UK. And whereas it used to be more of a sort of social housing scheme, it's far from it now. It's from young professionals, maybe getting on that property ladder with a 25 to 50% deposit. And it's become very popular. Just looking at deposits now, you're looking at sort of for £250,000 property, maybe 37,500 deposit with 15% deposit. On a shared ownership, 30% share, only £3,000. So it does obviously allow people to get onto that ladder, especially where deposit raising is most difficult. But again, difficult for the brokers because maybe you're looking at only a 25, 30%, 40% mortgage, the size of the mortgage is going to be a lot lower. If you're outside of London, the South East, that could be more difficult. And therefore, a lot of it has gravitated towards, where the demand has been in that area. But it is difficult. You have to have a very expert knowledge of and work with the housing associations. It's not a matter of just getting a mortgage approved. The customer has to meet the property requirements and the specification of the housing authority. And the broker has to vet that client to ensure they're buying the maximum possible share. It is quite complex. It is quite lower case values compared to normal. You do need volume to make it viable. And again, I think that's probably why it's become quite specialist. Although it is all positive news, and all these things do add to a positive environment and buying environment out there for first-time buyers.
I think the question is, I guess, over time, as the market loosens and lending gears up again, as it has been doing, whether these sorts of schemes are going to remain as interesting as they are. Are they likely to, as the first-time buyer market is going to return to a semblance of where it was, or are these schemes going to become a constituent part? I don't know if anybody has a view on that.
They'll become less important as time goes on, as the market recovers, but they are important now because they're a stepping stone. And as I think Peter said earlier, they give the public, they show the public that actually mortgages are available. If you do see a property you want to buy, then there are opportunities there. And the market will catch up and recover. We're already seeing a lot more 90% products out there at decent rates, where we will probably by the end of this year see one, maybe two standalone 95% loan to value products. And I think that market will come back gradually over time.
So if we can get, obviously, the message out to the market, consumer confidence builds, funding for lending continues doing its good work. See, I'm wondering if you guys can start thinking about a projection for me in 5 years' time, where you think lending might actually be. If we've got 216,200 first-time buyers in 2012, if we use that as a marker, how far back do you think the first-time buyer market will be in 5 years' time? So that's what, 2018 we're talking then. And I'm hurling this at you out of the blue, but Peter, if I can ask you first to give us a...
I think it's a tough one to guess. If you think 400,000 was a big number, somewhere between where we are and 400 would be a good place to get to. 216 just now. 5-6 years from now, a lot can happen. A lot can happen in Europe, a lot can happen in America, a lot can happen all over the world. It's difficult to call it out. I wouldn't give you a 5-year number, but I think it'll be certainly closer to, certainly a lot closer to the 400,000 number than we are today.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Monty, can I turn to you?
Yeah, I think the question for me is, what's the new normal going to be? If recent FSA figures suggested we're in a market of 152 billion. Is the new normal around 200 billion, and therefore what impact will that have on first-time buyers? Agree with Peter, but hard to pick a number, but if I had to, I'd say 353,000.
I like it. It's a nice number.
I'm clearly not as expert as Monty is with that precise figure, so I'm just going to sit on the fence a little bit like Peter did. But it's very difficult to actually come up with an exact figure, as the guys have said. I think a lot of things depend still on the economy. Are we still paying off a debt mountain? Where are we with Europe? We've got a new regulator coming in that is going to be tight. A lot about first-time buyers is going to be about innovation and how much innovation is actually allowed. And there are still people out there and regulators that will restrict potentially some innovation that wants to happen out there in terms of European regulation as well. So I think I think we can be heading towards that 400 without a doubt, but it depends on the flexibility and innovation that's allowed. The momentum has started. I'm a big believer in sort of talking up the market and keep that positivity going. It doesn't have to rely on every aspect of the economy to have to recover for us to actually get a positive outcome.
And Simon, what are your thoughts?
Well, here's the good news. It's not going to be less than today. I think we can all agree on that one, so hurrah for that. And if we're in this position, everyone's surviving in this particular market, so that's not the end of the world for the mortgage market. The economy as a whole and the demographics of the UK, net immigration continues to grow. More and more of those people are going to want to buy houses. There's a bigger demand for first-time buyers. If we are building the right sort of properties, that's the first question. And if the funding remains in place and starts to get a little bit easier, which it looks as though it should do, then quite clearly we're going to have more first-time buyers than we've had in the last few years, and the properties are going to be right, and the market itself will start to move a little bit more positively. If you want an exact figure, I can go 351, because that just makes me slightly less positive than Andy, and I think that's the right place to be.
Super, thanks very much. So, well, it just remains for me to say thank you very much to all our panellists today. Some super contributions, and obviously we may not have found the silver bullet this morning, but a huge thank you to our panellists nonetheless, and thank you very much for watching Mortgage Solutions Television.